May is ALS Awareness Month, and if you're wondering why I'm doing this, it is because I have a personal tie to ALS. I lost my dad to ALS in 2019. ALS stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also more commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So to put it simply, motor neurons slowly degrade until they die. So the neurons that control our movement. This means is that your voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles slowly stop working. You do become slowly paralyzed, but not just by the traditional sense of what you think of when you think of someone being paralyzed, but not just your muscles, but the things that you can't control. So your eating, breathing gets affected, and that's what usually the ultimate cause of death. Senses are not affected by ALS. Hearing, smell, taste, memory, and your brain is not really affected by ALS. So that is like the worst part of it, is that you're slowly becoming a prisoner in your body, but your brain is still there. You're fully aware of it. More than 90% of people that have ALS have no family history. So it's mostly a sporadic onset. Like, we really don't know what causes it. 1 in 300 people will receive a diagnosis in their lifetime. So ALS can affect anyone. For the most part, it affects people between the ages of 40 and 70, and it appears to affect men at a higher rate. But if you look at the photo in the center here, this is Leah, and she was diagnosed at 27, I believe, and she's the founder of Her ALS Story, which is a group of women that were diagnosed with ALS before the age of 35, and did this to create a platform for support with other women going through the same thing that she was. So it's just to show you that even though most people associate ALS with older people, older men, it really can affect anyone. And the big one here is that there is no cure. There's no cure at all. There's very few treatments, and the treatments give people maybe a couple extra months of life, but that's it. You start with muscle weakness, and the muscles begin to atrophy. This affects your fine motor skills, so slowly lose the ability to write, to do things like button a shirt, to brush your teeth, to put on your socks, to do any simple little thing. You slowly lose that ability to do it on your own. Usually what happens next is speech and swallowing difficulties. It affects the muscles that are involved with speaking, causing the slurred speech. So I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard anyone talking that has ALS that are in that stage where they're slowly starting to lose their voice. You lose your speech until you just can't speak anymore, and you lose your ability to swallow. Some people with ALS will decide to get a feeding tube, and they have to make that decision early on in their diagnosis, because when the time comes and they can't make that decision, their caregivers have to know, do they want a feeding tube or not? If they opt to not have a feeding tube, then they could die to malnutrition because they're no longer able to eat. Most patients, I feel like, do choose the feeding tube because it's not super invasive as you might think. It sucks because they never lost their taste. They can still smell the food, but they can't enjoy it anymore. If someone has slowly lost their speech but still has a little bit of movement in their limbs, they can write to communicate. But if they've lost that ability, then they can't really communicate with their voice or with their hands. So another thing that ALS patients utilize is an eye gaze machine. Use their eyes to create words, and then this machine speaks for them. So as it progresses, the muscles that control breathing weaken, which leads to difficulty breathing and can require a ventilator, which again is the next thing that people have to decide early on, is if they will choose to have a ventilator when and if that time comes. ALS in the media. This here is Lou Gehrig. He was diagnosed in 1939, I believe. He passed 2 years later. Stephen Hawking, and he is an extremely rare case of ALS. He had the ventilator, he had the eye gaze machine, he had all the things. And a newer face in the media for ALS is Brooke Eby. She kind of grew into her fame of ALS with TikTok. If you Google her name, she's been in tons of news like ABC and Today Show, and New York Times has done an article on her. She does a really good job about creating awareness on her social media platforms. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, that was in 2014. Took the world by storm. It raised an unprecedented amount of $115 million. If you think about it, it was one of the first major viral movements on social media. The money from this challenge went to the ALS Association. I've heard that there's been controversy on where all that money went. Why isn't there a cure? It is a rare disease. It's complex. and poorly understood in the biology of it. It's underfunded compared to other major diseases. Other neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, and Huntington's. They're all connected, and so finding a cure for one of these diseases would help unlock a cure for all of them, which is why fundraising is super important. So looking ahead, right now there is currently some funding freezes, which is really devastating the ALS community. It's halting the consideration of new grant applications, leaving a lot of money in limbo. One thing I suggest is just staying aware and educated on some of these diseases, as awareness is the greatest agent for change. 2 organizations I do recommend checking out are ALS Therapy Development Institute, or ALS TDI. Focus is on research for ALS treatments and cures. Other big one is I Am ALS. It's more focused on advocacy and helping people that have ALS and helping them find resources to navigate their new life with ALS. A little bit more about me. I have my own little creative side business. With my efforts with Pellets and Petals, I've donated over 3,000, but probably closer to 4,000 at this point. I just want to encourage you guys that if something like this ever comes across your life and you find a personal connection to it, to small steps toward big changes. $3,000 isn't that much, but it's not nothing. And I want to leave you guys with the most important thing that ALS taught me: never take movement for granted. So I hope that none of you ever have to witness a loved one or a friend suffer through this disease. For those of you that have, and I know a few of you have, it's really hard to describe, but it's why I'm so grateful for any opportunity I get to go take a walk around the block, or I get to go for a run, or the simple ability to sit up from your chair or roll in bed without having someone help you move. That movement is not promised, and so yeah, just don't take it for granted.